Welcome to the Builders Podcast, episode 65, Doland White, Sadie Hawkins episode, interviews Matt about his business. Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast if you love business and real stories from the trenches. And after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share if we've earned it. Hit that notification bell too if you're on YouTube so you don't miss each episode. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable From the Trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Woohoo! Okay, sorry. We can cut that part out. Just because recording doesn't mean we can't edit this.
I know. Hopefully.
Okay, well, we're good.
Hopefully.
Right. What are we here for? Hi, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. I'm your host, Matt Levenhagen, and today we have with us Doland White. He's back. He's back for a third episode.
Morning, Matt.
Morning. So we've been doing a lot of laughing. You can tell already. We're going to try to settle down and be serious very soon. But yeah, so he actually was on the first guest episode. You were episode 11, the first time I had a guest.
Yeah.
And we're just saying, how it was like, we're going to just do this, and if it turns out badly, we just will never publish it.
Yeah. You said it was aptly titled, A Conversation with Doland. No other whatever happened.
Keep it simple. Yeah.
Just easy.
Then we had a great conversation about team building, and that was episode 28.
Yeah.
And so it's been a little while. This is episode 65.
Yeah.
We didn't have this fancy Riverside you keep referring to. He's like really impressed by Riverside.
I'm completely blown away. I came in today, and it's like I'm in this swanky thing. It's got buttons and stuff going on, and it looks like a studio, and I'm impressed. It's very cool.
Good.
It's a lot of pressure.
We're not really that fancy. This is the UI that's fancy.
There you go.
Same old match over here. Okay, maybe with a little fancier setup here, but anyway. So what we're doing today, though, is Doland had this idea. We were talking like a month or so ago.
Yeah.
And he brought up this thing called Sadie Hawkins. Sadie Hawkins dances, where the ladies ask the boys to the dance or to dance, one of the two.
Yeah, both.
And so I guess, which one does that make? Which one of us a lady today?
Apparently, that's me today.
You're the lady. Okay.
Because I asked you to the dance. But we should. I don't know. Do we have time to talk about identity? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. In pronouns, and I'm not sure. Anyway.
Well, that's another episode. Okay.
Yeah.
But I actually have no idea what we're talking about today, because Doland is going to be interviewing or talking to me today. So I'm actually going to turn it over to him, and he's going to take control. And just talk and ask me stuff, and we'll talk about stuff and whatever. So that's what we're here for. And with that, Doland, it's all you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and yeah, it is Sadie Hawkins Day. It's that day where we get to change roles. I mean, like you mentioned, we've had a couple of interviews together, and I've listened to many of the podcasts and enjoy them. But I know that you've also got a rich history and background in business and life, and you also play trombone, which I just learned about, which is fascinating since I was a tuba player. We could actually start a brass band, but it all depends upon what restaurant we go to. But I do have some some things I want to talk about today, because you're as a business owner and as a fellow compatriot and old cohort when we used to work together back in Rapid Crush, and in those days, it's been fun to watch the evolution of your business and see the things that you do, and kind of get an idea about your successes. And I thought It's a really good idea just to kind of maybe flip the tables around and let me ask you some questions about you. So I do have some questions. I've got some things lined up for you today.
Okay.
So if you could be taller, no, I'm sorry, that's not the one I was going to ask. No, if you know it, when you first started your business and you were going, I think one of the things that people have a kind of a challenge with is that arc, right? They have an idea about a business that they want to do, and they get kind of in that track of this is where I'm going down this path, and they go down that path to the detriment of riding it all the way to the bitter end. It's kind of like buying stock high and riding it all the way to the ground. When you had the idea about starting your business and where you wanted to go, how did you kind of first frame in, I think this is a good idea, and then start the path? And then we'll kind of get into things that have happened kind of along the way, because I'm really curious about a few things. So I'm really interested in kind of those founding thoughts and kind of what your first vision looked like.
Yeah, okay. We can start there.
How's that for a good starting question?
I like it. You're a natural. I was just saying that you got to have your own podcast someday. Okay, so no, it's interesting because when I so in the context of web design, web development, I made a decision back in my early 40s. I'm 51 now, so probably 41ish, 10 years ago. I made a pivot in my life, and I had been doing internet marketing, selling digital products, affiliate marketing, doing all this pay-per-click advertising, all this stuff for years. And I was burned out. There's different reasons why I decided it was time to cash out of that and move into a different phase in my life. And one of the reasons I chose web design and development was because I always liked building things. I like building websites, and I like tinkering with websites. And so in the first couple of years, though, I just kind of did it as a freelancer, and I did it kind of, can I say half-ass on this podcast? Is that?
Yes, it's your podcast. I mean, you can, yes.
I didn't take it as seriously as I probably could have in those first years.
Yeah.
I was in that kind of transition stage, and but I did enjoy it, and then when Rapid Crush came around, that was when I actually was starting to take it more seriously, and that was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So 4 years working, doing stuff for Rapid Crush. In those years, it was a matter of, I knew this is the whole time during that, before that, and after that, I knew this was the phase of my life. This is what I was going to do. If I was going to do anything, it was going to be in tech. It was going to be doing building stuff with code, maybe some design, right?
Yeah.
So during Rapid Crush, it was always like we were doing these great things. We're doing awesome, like we had all this great vision to build WordPress stuff. And but even through that, it was like as long as I was learning and I was getting better at what I was doing, my craft. That's what I loved about working for there is I could focus on my craft more. I learned how to build. I had built teams before, but building team, learning Scrum, learned added more pieces to my toolkit, tools to my toolkit or something. And so towards the end when I left Rapid Crush, I kind of was at kind of a crossroads in terms of where I would take web design development. I knew what I was going to be doing. I didn't know what form that would take. So I'd already kind of in my mind knew that, you have always a plan B, plan C, and, or things could like blow up. And, and so what was I going to do if I was no longer with Rapid Crush? I probably was thinking about that for years, since day one. So in the first few months, I wasn't sure. I was actually thinking, well, should I just get another job as a web developer.
Yeah.
And doing WordPress or whatever. And so I did actually apply to a bunch of jobs. I worked for an agency in Milwaukee here for a couple days. That's a long story, but we won't go too much into that. But it was a
Yeah.
it was a recruiter found me the job, and they promised me some things about the job that weren't actually true. But it was actually a legitimate agency, a large agency here in Milwaukee. So did that for a couple days. But during that whole thing, I was doing things in parallel. I was kind of looking for jobs, and then, but at the same time, I got that kind of entrepreneurial business kind of spirit and background where I'm going to build myself a website too. And I'm going to start this little business called Unified Web Design. I'm going to choose a name. I had that already picked out probably the same day I, went out on my own again. So I already kind of so I was doing that, because I had some extra time on my hands, and then reached out to some connections. Ryan Lawrence, he was probably the first guy I got in contact with.
Absolutely.
I knew he was doing freelancing. So he's like, yeah, I got some work, or my clients need some help. And so I started doing stuff with him almost immediately. And then it was just going into the mode of just getting work. So I was going looking for any type of employment. But at the same time, I'm looking, well, how can I get some projects? And I naturally went back to what I was doing pre-Rapid Crush, which was being on freelance sites. I started getting some projects there. Started doing work for an agency that was getting people from there that I still work with to this day, 3+ years later. So I started building relationships, looking for that work and figuring out, what that, and then at some point, months in, I said, you know what? Looks like I'm going to build an agency. At first it was kind of like freelancing. I was just doing my own thing. And I started thinking a little bit bigger. I'm like, well, I can build teams. I can do this. Let's see what I can, this is not getting any younger. This is my last hurrah. Let's do this thing. That's kind of how it got started. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that for kind of the path. I want to go back to something you said just a couple of minutes ago, and that was about truth. About when you had a job for 72 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
So when you actually went out and you discovered that it wasn't what you thought it was, right? And when it kind of just was and you mentioned, and actually you said the word truth in there. You just kind of I found the truth, right? That's part of it. And it's kind of interesting I'd love to hear kind of your perspective, because I think one of the things that sets businesses apart is the ability to tell the truth. And the ability to really, not just portray who you are, but live into who you are and be who you say you are. So I'm really kind of curious about not to have explicit details around what happened from a truth perspective, but how you kind of interwove truth into the way you run your business and kind of the way you manage promises with your clients.
Yeah, I think reputation is a big part of it. I don't want to put something forth that's not true. I want to be authentic, and I want to be, if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. Or certain things are what they are. I think I find it easier to navigate life telling the truth or being as truthful as possible. Hell, I'm not perfect, I'm not an angel or anything, but
What?
But it. Let's be clear. But no, it's I think people say that all the time. It's if you're not truthful, it's hard to maintain that over time. It's way better to just be honest about things. But in this case, I don't know 100% what parties that was at fault. It was a communication kind of breakdown. It's just how the job was structured. And I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm impatient with those things, but I'm the type of person that's like, I'm just going to end it now. I'm not going to, I didn't waste their time. I'm like, all right, well, this isn't what I thought it was. See you later.
Yeah.
Have fun. It was great. I mean, I would love to have worked for that agency and done things, but it didn't fit. Part of it was related to kind of how it fit into my lifestyle and the way I like to manage my life. And that's maybe why I should be working for myself more anyway. But I just think, I like when I'm looking for other people to work with, other agencies or other freelancers or other partners or whatever. I feel like I'm a decent judge of character these days. And I kind of, you can tell when somebody's not being completely forthright and whatever that conversation. I have to feel comfortable. If something in me, my gut, something tells me something's off here, that is, I will back away. So,
yeah, that's it. That's interesting because what do they call the gut? This right? There's the brain, the heart, the gut. Right, the three pieces that go into decisions. And I think a lot of times it is gut. A lot of folks call it's intuition. It's that feeling that something is not quite what you thought it was.
Yeah, and it's. I think it's informed by past experiences too, because I've been in business for a long time, 30 years off, various different industries and businesses, and from art to insurance to contracting business, we were doing remodeling, painting, repair stuff. That's especially here in Milwaukee, I ran into some interesting people that really like to steal everything from you.
Awesome.
So I've had some, partnerships and stuff over the years that, like I remember in the early 2000s even, I was still very naive. I trusted people too much. And so I got myself into some partnerships or with other contractors or with other, there's people doing renovating houses and here in Milwaukee, fixing up old whatever. And I just in that business of I learned that people aren't all honest, and actually to protect yourself, you kind of have to start with a little skepticism and a little questioning things and watching people's how they talk and try to pick up on things, and if something doesn't feel right, maybe it's not. Maybe to trust that gut a little bit. And I had one of the biggest things that happened back then. It's one of those events that kind of has rippled through everything else I've done, including online. When I started building online businesses, I had partners throughout the years too there. I had one event in particular that changed something up here. And I had been building a team. So this is back in 2001 or 2. I had been building a team to paint houses, and we started to do remodeling and stuff, fixing houses, drywall, all that stuff. And I had a carpenter. I had 2 or 3 painters. We were painting exteriors, interiors, doing all this stuff, and we were busy. And I figured out how to advertise to where I could turn it on and off and we were 3-4 months deep. I was doing a little ad in the paper here in Milwaukee, and it just was tested, and I was just had all the business I needed. So I started building a team, and I started, we're doing stuff. We're doing great. And this other contractor who actually was kind of introduced to me through a friend. And this guy he'd been in business for 25 years doing what he's doing. Seemed like a great guy on the surface. A lot of people knew him. He was in part of this breakfast club we were blocked to back then. But it turned out this is the guy that basically stole my team from me. Somehow, I was so naive, I didn't even realize he was doing all this. wasn't paying me on jobs. He started not paying me on jobs. I had to start putting stuff on credit cards. He put me in debt, and he stole my team. Like, I would find out he had my guys out in like a completely different city working on projects I didn't even know about.
Wow.
The idea was like what he came to me for was, we had met and was like, well, he's like, you have this team. You haven't been doing this long. You've been doing an amazing job building this team, and doing great. You're busy and all this stuff. He's like, I got all this work, but I can't keep a team. For some reason, I just have a hard time building a team or getting people to work for me. That should have been a red flag right there, right? I'm like, that's
an indicator, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how naive I was, right? I'm like, I just wanted to build this big thing. I'm like, he's got all this work. We're going to add more work, and we're going to do more, stuff. Yeah. Just wanted to keep building it, right? And so that informs a lot of what I do even to this day. Like there was other things that happened where I don't know how we got onto the subject, but where I'm ending with this.
But we were talking about truth, and go ahead, keep going.
Truth, well, and how that plays in everything. And same thing. Like I had some in the early days of the internet or doing stuff online. I had some memberships and partners, and similar type of things happened. There was an event where somebody had control of the money and I didn't. And I was naive enough to let them, like, we're partners. He handled the finances. Suddenly I wasn't getting paid. And I had already had that bad experience. That within like days, that partnership was over and I was launching a new membership. What I did have was the list. So that came with me. But from that point forward, partnerships were kind of taboo for me, and I had partners, but they would always be junior partners, and I would have more control of stuff. It's very important to me because I think, and I don't know if it's my background, how I was brought up, or it's related to my family or how I was just brought up as a Lutheran Christian household. I'm not very Christian these days, but I was brought up that way. So a lot of that has probably influenced me. And I want to trust people, and I care about people. I realize that just because I don't think a certain way, that doesn't mean other people don't. And sure. So over the years, it's kind of identifying the signals. And it took a while, but
that's interesting. It's funny. I think that it's interesting that the things that you're talking about, and we'll kind of dive into a couple of them, but I think that people there's a corollary to kind of doesn't really matter the business per se, what you do, right? In business, there are things we do, and if we live in a capitalistic society, so there's things we do and we generate income from that, and income becomes a measure of things that we get to go do in our life, go on vacation or buy a car or have jackhammers in my backyard today and all the other stuff that's going on around us. So there's things that we do, but the principles that you're talking around, kind of that learning arc as you're young in career and discovering things and finding out the value of truth, the value of trust. Trust is probably the bigger word of the two. Doesn't matter what business you're in, because the laws that kind of wrap around those things are universal. So you can own a gas station or design websites, and those things remain consistent. So as your business was growing a little while ago, you said, so I was kind of on this path and kind of where I was heading with this idea around your kind of your history with your business. And you kind of said, so I was on this path and I kind of went, I think I'm going to become an agency. And what was that like kind of in your thinking process that kind of made you stop and think about, I probably need to go this direction and not go that direction?
So one of the things I've always been attracted to since probably the 90s when I was in my 20s. I got into sales back then because I always, this is related, so it's going to be related. I go back a lot, it seems like.
You do go back. Well, at your age, I mean,
But I got into sales for a certain reason. One of the reasons I got into sales, and I sold everything from vacuum cleaners, Encyclopedia Britannica, to Kirby vacuum cleaners, Encyclopedia Britannica,
awesome
electronics, all this stuff I was doing for a few years. But the reason I did that is because I didn't like having a cap on my income. I didn't like the hard ceilings. Like, this is all you can make. And when you work for somebody else, you'll have a limit. I mean, even my wife, like, she's in healthcare, she's making great money, and she's found ways to increase that over the years.
Sure,
but there's still a cap. There's still she gets a certain tier for whatever reason whatever they call it, and it's like that. You can't make any more than that. That's it, unless you do some other thing. And so I just, for some reason, that's just kind of like, I don't like limits in my life. And so it's the same way kind of when I was thinking about freelancing versus building an agency. So everyone has different definitions, what freelancer is and what agency is and stuff. So
what are they in your mind? What's the difference between the two in your mind? Between freelance and agency?
It's kind of simple in my mind. Like, I see a freelancer as somebody that's pretty much solo. Maybe they, get help from a friend once in a while on some project or whatever. Mm-hmm. They are kind of doing their own thing, and they do, the hours are their hours. They're doing all the work. I think you start to tip into an agency when you can do more than one thing at a time. So in the early days, I was able to do that by outsourcing, but just simple outsourcing, contract based, project based, outsource for a period of time, just get somebody to help me on a particular project so they could work on that project. I'm working on other stuff. Mm-hmm. And so then over time it's been, adding employees and then, still doing contract, stuff. Mm-hmm. But being able to, I just feel like it's the ability to be able to do more. And that's what I'm kind of like, when I decided to kind of start defining myself as an agency, I knew I was probably going to outsource stuff, but I really, that's the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to build a small team. I didn't want to have to do everything. There's benefits to not having a team and being able to, it allows you to do more things. It allows you to get more expertise and just scale things up a little bit more. So it kind of lifts that cap. So I can only do so much as a freelancer. I can only do so much. Like, I can raise my prices. Right. I can be an $80 per hour developer today and $150 an hour developer tomorrow. I can do that, but there's still there's a certain industry cap there too. Yeah. So I would either have to find other ways to generate revenue rather than what I was doing there or whatever. But if I really wanted to, and I don't have some like vision to build a 1,000-man woman team, mm-hmm. I want to build a small agency and but just to be able to have the expertise there to be able to take on larger projects and stuff. And so I can have a dedicated designer, a dedicated developer that has this skill set. And, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It was just a matter of, I like having a team. I've built teams before in different, like I said, even in the contracting business. I liked being able to, there's a bit to get into there, but one of the things is there's things you don't want to do. And it's great to have somebody else there to do them for you.
That's a good point.
Also, So,
Yes.
so if I have like back in the contracting business, I have again this like vision of a particular project,
Yeah.
and we had like it was a 3-story high house, and we
Ooh.
had painted the outside. I think we were just doing the trim on the house, and I had backed up my truck and had this ladder, like 30-foot ladder, up against the house and wedged into my truck, but it was still not to the peak. And the only way to do it was to get somebody up there to that last 1 or 2 rungs and to lay against the building. And they're like 40 feet in the air. And we all were just sitting there. I had like 3 or 4 guys there. We were all just sitting there looking like, I'm not doing it. I just decided, like, there's no way I'm risking my life on this stupid house right now. But some guy, finally, one of my guys was like, screw it, give me that. And he grabs it and he just trucks right up there, goes up there, knocks out the tip, the peak of the house, comes back down, like, here you go. That's what a team's all about. Somebody stepping up, taking that. It was a beautiful moment. It was a good bonding moment it was fun. But things have happened same way in like, web design, web development. Sometimes, like I'm looking at a problem. I'm like, I don't know. That's, but I know that my developer here has that skill set that he's not going to have a problem. He's going to have fun with it.
Sure. I think it's interesting because I think that's the quality of a great team. Well, and first off is the ability to build it. So back to the guy that you talked about in the construction industry that said, well, I just can't figure out why I can't build a team. That's an indicator. That is an indicator that like in any business, I don't understand why I've got a 30% turnover rate. I'm really not sure what's going on. A third of my company quits every year. I don't know what we're doing. I'm continually training new people. But the ability to build a team and then get to know your team and then know not only where their skills are, but you said something really important. But the guy that went up and painted the peak of the house 40 feet up in the air is a great example because it's a person who just kind of went, screw it. I think was the description. And went up the ladder. And one of the things that I love is there's I believe in business. There's a rule that your team will rise to occasions. They will rise to an occasion if you just ask. If you just give them the opportunity, and you would be absolutely amazed at the fact that your team will rise to occasion. And I think that's one of the things I've watched with how you've interacted with since we've spent time together before on this work with your teams is to give them the challenge about, hey, can we, what if we do these things and can we grow together? So as your business has grown, right, and I love the concept around, around caps, because there is being the grandson of a redneck, there's no redneck saying about money separates friends and family. And there is a cap, right? There is a cap on what you can earn at the level you're at, depending upon the value you bring. And one of the aspects of being a great entrepreneur is you get to uncap it. And then by building a team, you get to uncap it and help others accomplish their dreams at the same time. So I love that.
Yeah, there's other reasons.
Yeah. That's love kind of the way you put it. There's when I was kind of thinking about the questions, I think inside of businesses, so you talk about building an agency, and it takes an entrepreneurial spirit to do that. You have to kind of think like an entrepreneur, and and carry a bag and sell and talk. And I personally believe everybody should carry a bag. Everybody should have an opportunity to have that door slammed in their face. Mine was pools. Not everybody wants a pool, so it's amazing how many different ways that you can hear the word no. But from an entrepreneurial spirit, how do you, it takes work, right, to keep your spirit up. right? And to keep the, there's good days, and then there's medium days, and then there's tough days, and then there's good, and it goes like this from a kind of a, not a business, but an experiential perspective. So what do you do to keep your head screwed on right? What I mean, it's how do you keep your focus, and how do you set your attitude, and what are the things that you do to keep Matt focused?
Oh, that's a good question. What keeps me focused? I'm hard-headed. I decide I'm going to go in a direction, and I just keep going. And it's kind of like that, though.
Yeah.
I've over the years, I did a lot of reading, especially back in my 20s again. Let's go back there for a minute. I picked up this book you're probably familiar with, Think and Grow Rich.
What?
Early 90s, before the internet.
That book.
Yeah, before the internet.
Yeah.
And books like that, like, instilled this thing in me, like, you choose a direction, make a decision, kind of have this burning desire, you create this burning desire, and you just go for it. And it might be years off, but you're just going towards that vision. And that doesn't always work out, obviously, because you can do that. There's going to be a point sometimes where you still have to be like, okay, well, maybe this isn't my direction, and maybe I need to, this isn't working out. So I have that kind of, I think I just have that kind of ingrained in me, like, so I don't go into something, when I decide to do something, I don't now question myself. Like, I'm going to give it my all. And, that may include struggling. And I know that that's just part of the journey. And you're going to have failures. Right. I had, an early couple years of this agency, I had contracts that didn't work out. Well, even last year. But I had I had to sever certain types of relationships where it was like, that's not my kind of client. It made me some money a little bit, but that's not. So I those were many failures. There's many decisions. So there were up and downs. I had given myself a little bit of a runway to do this. So I had basically, I bootstrap. I'm just going to finance it myself. I'm not going to go out and try to get a big loan or, somebody to invest in me or anything like that. That's beyond me. I'm just going to build it from the ground up. But I gave myself, enough time. I knew that I was confident enough where, again, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do web design development and be in that space. And I was okay if it was me doing the work, especially in those first couple of years, doing most of the work. And I knew I could make money at it. I knew that I wouldn't starve. I may not be, in the beginning making a ton of money, but I'm going to be able to get contracts. I'm pretty good at selling stuff. I know how to get business, and it's just going to be time. So I had a lot of confidence in myself because this is my first rodeo. So, and I felt like I also had just a solid vision. Wasn't something net new that's never been done in the world. Other people have agencies. So I just had to put my best foot forward, and yeah, I mean, like I said, there were still, sometimes I feel like I only talk about the roses, the great things that happen,
sure,
and how well we're doing, and we grew this much last year and stuff. But within there, yeah, there's still ups and downs and things that happened that didn't work out, and I had to really steer the ship and try to figure out who we were, what type of agency we were going to be, and who we weren't going to work with, who we would say no to, and how pricing fit into that too. Like, yeah. So I think it's just, having talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and others too, you see who's successful and who's not successful. I think it's a personal thing. It's a personal journey, and some are ready for it, some aren't, or it's going to be harder for some, harder for others, depending on what your personality is. Like I'm not really good at self-analysis, I don't think, but I think hard-headed is kind of probably part of that. I just,
Yeah.
I'm going to do something, and then I'm always trying to find the positive in things. Even if things blow up, like what did I learn from that? I know I'm
Wow.
always growing, I'm always learning, I'm always trying to extract lessons. It's on a micro level, from project to project, client to client, from a website, to tech side of things, to just in business in general. Like if something does happen, things are going to happen. And you're probably going to feel the pain a little bit and be upset about it for a minute, but that subsides and you just get back to work and you just, yeah. I mean, some things it's like, yeah. I mean, you're mad about it for a few days, but and then you try to figure out how you're going to blame it on yourself and move forward. Like, it's probably your fault. Whatever happened.
Yeah.
You can try. I don't try to blame things on others. I just, I just shouldn't have been in that relationship to begin with, or whatever. And
Right.
just keep going. And sometimes, and also it's that flexibility and try to stay fluid. So if I have a certain thing that's not working out, that I can kind of adjust a little bit along the way.
Yeah.
Leadership. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does. I mean, there was a lot of things in there just to kind of unpack a little bit. It's interesting. You said so. I read this, the Think and Grow Rich, and I've got an old copy that, our old friend Bob Proctor signed that for me a long, long time ago, and I'm rereading Organized Planning, the section, and I'm kind of reading a chapter a week as I go along. But one of the things that was in the chapter this morning that I'll just to touch on, that since you mentioned the book, is around being accountable. And ultimately, a leader, it takes the ultimate accountability. So it doesn't kind of really matter kind of what happened over at the end of the day. It's the leader that just says, you know what, that was on me. Either I wasn't clear enough, or my decision was this, but ultimately, you step into that. And I think that also goes back to, that skill goes back to the ability to build a team. Like your team has grown over time, and even though some of it's kind of elastic, kind of depending upon the roles you've got that you need and the kind of services that you're providing to your clients, it takes that, accountability for a team to know that no matter what, you've got their back. So, and that's, that you will take them to the hospital when they fall off a 40-foot ladder, and when they're painting the top, you'll drive them right there, right to the ER immediately.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, maybe. And as long as they don't, as long as they land in your truck and you don't have to pick them up.
Right.
But, and the other part too with it's a couple of things I think that businesses and entrepreneurs, think about, and just maybe to kind of summarize before we get to the last couple of questions, but is, to be clear on who you are and know what you're going to say yes and no to. A lot of businesses get hung up on, they get attached to the money. And when they get attached to the money, they make a bad decision because it's a money-based decision, and I'm going to go do this, and it takes you off of that path. And to get all the way back to the path is a long haul. So to keep that focus has been.
I mean, it gets easier
as
your revenue grows, and as you get to a certain point, you got to structure your revenue in a way where you can start more easily saying no to things and going after the things that you want. In the beginning, I had to take whatever. So,
there are those
time,
moments. Yeah. Is there a check? Yes, I can do that. Watch this.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There have been those moments in careers. So just a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap down because we've been going for a while. The first question is, what pisses you off in business?
What pisses me off in business?
Well, what would piss you off?
Oh, man. what would piss me? It goes back to I'm a pretty even guy.
You are that guy. Yes.
I am that guy. I try to stay
I'm just
even,
curious.
like, no matter what's going on.
Yes.
But it goes back to our early conversation. I love people. I'm big into building relationships with people. I like honest people, like people that when the thing that pisses me off probably the most would be anytime somebody does something purposefully to hurt me in my business or anything that affects me negatively, and they're doing it purposely. And they know they're doing it, or it should just be there's very few times in my life where I've lost my cool, kind of. Let's go back into history again. Let's go back there. There's a couple instances, and and when I was young, I kind of did have anger issues. I was a very angry young man.
Yeah.
But I figured out how to work through that, and part of it was reading and just becoming a better person, learning how to meditate. I remember this particular event where somebody was in the construction business. I had painted this guy's house, and he just flat out didn't want to pay me. He wasn't going to pay me. And I don't know what his excuses were, but I remember being in a restaurant with my wife and stepping out of that restaurant and just yelling into that phone and reading the riot act, whatever you want to call it. Like, and I ended up taking the guy to court. He actually had left the state, but he had to come back for court to pay me on this, and I did eventually get the funds. But those type of things, that's what it takes a lot. It's just, I just put so much value into human beings being caring. And so those are the events, type of things over the years where when somebody's doing something they know is wrong and they're trying to take advantage of you in some way. And it's like, no, we're a team. Let's work together. Let's, why are you, and that was something I had to really learn in those early days because I trusted people too much. And I hate to say it because it's like, well, that's just being naive. And it's like, you don't want to not trust everybody.
Sure.
But you do kind of harden after a while. You learn lessons that it's like you ask more questions and you pay more attention. I just that's probably it. That's probably the quick answer is just when somebody is purposely trying to harm something that I'm doing and getting in and making me like, and has some impact, oftentimes financially on me. I do not like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's because businesses operate at the speed of trust. And which is just there's a bunch of rules around velocity when I think of businesses. And one of the rules around velocity is the speed of trust. And I think it is to your point, it is, and I like how you kind of reclarified the statement around learning it, but not only learning it, but also learning to ask better questions so that you can identify it sooner, you see it sooner, and you've got context, and you can kind of look back and go, yeah, I remember that guy when I had to step out of the restaurant. I had a couple of those in my career. I remember throwing my cell phone off a 9-story building once. So it was fun, and gravity works. So and it exploded on impact. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, like just as an example, like this, just a few days ago, I had a conversation. I've been working with this particular agency for a while now, since last year, and we had a call the other day about a couple projects, and he brought up the idea of because they do marketing, digital marketing and advertising, all that stuff, and they like what we're doing. He's like, we should partner. Anytime I hear that partner word, I immediately go into this kind of defensive stance. And so I know that we're not ready yet. He's like, he's not ready. I said, we kind of already do partner. We actually, that's kind of one of our verticals or things that we do is try to complement agencies that need the services we provide and work together with them. And so we kind of already, but I don't know where he's going with that, but it's already red alert, and these are the questions I'll ask. This is what I'm going to make sure, because I'm going to protect my assets and make sure that any situation, any contractual situation or whatever would not, we already built. So yeah, that's it.
It's interesting. It is that balance, right? Because there's many connotations to the word partners. So so probably the last, So last question: the team that you have today, and that you've developed. Obviously, you developed it now over years, right? Without naming names, if there was an heir apparent, if you're developing, have you been focusing on developing your team? You mentioned before having people that would climb that 40-foot ladder. In your strategy in doing team development with everybody kind of around you in the team, are you focused in areas of specialty, or are you also focused on growing someone in the team who can come alongside and help you do other kinds of leadership activities or sell or kind of? So what I'm looking for is there's two aspects. There's a delivery component and there's a business component to teams, and kind of your philosophy in this is the 60-second quick answer question on your philosophy on that.
Yeah, I think different stages of your business requires different people, right? And so at the stage of my business now, it's more about getting the work done and the jobs done, and getting the right people in place that are expertise in certain areas, whether that be a certain type of development or. The closest I get to that right now is probably, in the VA department, the virtual assistant, where her job is just going to organically change over time as our needs change and our organization changes. What she does today, she's heavily focused on marketing and content and kind of some day-to-day stuff or whatever. But someday that she may help more, and that may grow into more project. She kind of helps me sometimes with client stuff, but. That she's gonna. I see that growing, but I have another phase of team building that's going to occur over the next couple of years. I've kind of given myself a 3-year window where a lot of my team, most of my team, but like employees are international. So India, Philippines, we kind of built that kind of team, but I also have U.S. contractors that help. We work together and help each other. But what I want to do is I want to build a U.S.-based team, and that U.S.-based team is where the kind of the next stage of growth is, where they'll start more on the management side, account management, and help in other business-related areas, but also just help. I'll have both teams, and this team interface with this team, and that's my vision anyway. And that's, I think, where all the business related team building will happen. And my goal is 10, 20 years from now to be able to, maybe somebody will give me a nice offer on the agency or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll be here forever. Maybe I'll still be 100 doing this, but I want to be able to get to a point where I know I've talked to other agency owners who are at that point, or were at that point when they sold, where you can step away for a couple of weeks and the business still operates. Things are still going. And that's where I want to find myself in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. It's interesting. Interesting you say that, Matt, because not to harken back to our old friend Bob. One of the things that he would talk about is the definition of a successful business is you go to sleep and the business makes money overnight. You wake up in the morning and the business is going with or without you. And you focus on growing and you focus on doing things that you do. But there's a continuation of the business process as it goes. So it's interesting to kind of hear you land in that spot. So,
and I don't have a time frame specific to the day time frame. It's just I know that's the next phase, and I know it'll be dependent on how we do. Because you obviously need to grow revenue to get to that point too. So.
Yes, that's part of it, especially when you are self-funded. And the details; those are just details. Yeah. So just kind of so first thing is I want to thank you for giving me time to come in this morning and spend time with you on the podcast, and appreciate the opportunity to interview you and be Sadie for the day, and I've enjoyed it because I think there's great value in having, there are those people who teach, those people who do, and very rarely do you have the opportunity to pick people's, get through the brain process with people who've done both, done it, taught it, spoke it, been in it, and you're one of those guys. I hold you in high regard. So it's an honor to have an opportunity.
You did a great job today.
Well, thank you very much. So if people want to know more about you, where could they go to find out more information about you on the World Wide Web, the internet, the Al Gore internet?
Yeah, well, first you can just Google Matt Levenhagen, and I'll be on that first page all over the place. But otherwise, thebuilders.fm is where you will find our podcast these days. And unifiedwebdesign.com is our web design agency.
Yeah.
Where we do maintenance and custom work and all the stuff you'll find there. That's basically it right now.
Good.
And otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. I spend most of my time in those two places.
Awesome.
You can find Matt Levenhagen there.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks for
I'm going to take it back now. Thanks, everybody. This was fun. We may have to do it again sometime. We're going to go back to just whatever it is we do. All right. Take care.
That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. If you want to comment on this episode's page, provide me with requests on topics for future episodes, or inquire about being a guest, please find your way to thebuilders.fm. You can contact me there or add a comment under these show notes. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.